Իրադարձությունն է, որ մենք վաղուց ենք սպասել, դա մեր թարգմանչական լաբորատորիայի բացումն է, որը պիտի իրականացնի կարևոր աշխատանքներ, դա նախ եւ առաջ համատեղում մեր թարգմանչական գործի, ինֆորմացիոն տեխնոլոգիաների եւ նաեւ իրականացնի ծրագրեր նպատակաուղղված մագիստրոսական մագիստրանտների պատրաստում։ Մենք ուզում ենք, որ մեր առնվազն մագիստրատուրայի ուսանողները կարողանան միաժամանակ եւ սովորել եւ օգտագործել իրենց գիտելիքները։ Եվ մի քանի բնականը դա միայն այդ լաբորատորիան չէ, մի քանի ծրագիր է իրականացնում համալսարանում կապված թարգմանությունների հետ, թե գեղագիտական, թե այս ինֆորմացիոն տեխնոլոգիաների տեսանկյունից եւ այսօր լավ անիթ է այս ամենը համախմբել։ Եվ ես շատ ուրախ եմ, որ այդ տարբեր կազմակերպություններից եւ եկել է մեր գործընկերը բազմաթիվ թարգմանություններ է ունեցել, ես կխնդրեմ
Թարգմանական դպրոցն է, որ հայ իրականությունը իր ողջ բարձրությամբ ու հմայքով կարող է օտարներին ներկայացնել եւ նաեւ մեզ հայերիս բերել բարձր մշակույթ եւ գրականություն։ Դրա համար ուրախ եմ, շնորհավորություններս եմ ես ուզում բերել, անշուշտ նաեւ օրհնություն, որպեսզի այս գործը, որը սկսել է, իսկապես ունենա իր բարի արդյունքները եւ իմ կողմից էլ, քանի որ ես այսօր ոչ միայն այստեղ եմ որպես հոգեվորական օրհնություն բերելու, այլ նաեւ հին ընկերն ու գործընկեր կարող եմ ասել պարոն Զոլյանի եւ ինքս էլ թարգմանությամբ
I have been translating for more than 20 years, and I have experience in this field, so I can really appreciate this occasion. I also have to tell that this is a good occasion for us too, because I work also in teaching house of Edgefield, so we always need translators of high standards. So, Mr. Zolyan, my congratulations to you, and I bless this project and everybody that put their efforts for this work and for this laboratory. I want to thank everybody, and I ask you to come and share your experience in translation, because you have translated the most difficult text with many and also beauty of the text that we made. And this is agreements according to which and due to which we have had many events, joint events, and the target of this work, of this joint work, is the development of education and the work.
Thank you very much. I don't have too much to add, and I would like to congratulate on this occasion the Bristol University for this initiative. And our cooperation is indeed going on for 2 years. And we got financial aid from Swedish International Development Agency, but let's not exaggerate this aid, this grant, because it doesn't only it doesn't only concern with financial aid, but also the organization. And I see a lot of reform and change wills in Bristol University, and we see enthusiastic professional groups of professionals that took the initiative and are realizing, bringing to life this initiative. And I think that now it is much more important to think about how we're going to see this translation laboratory functioning. Translation we have already mentioned, and the Holiness have already mentioned that. Translation art, it is very important today for Armenia, because Armenians are so-called international, multicultural, and it is very important for Armenians to know lots of languages, and part of our culture and transmitting this culture and getting another cultures. It is very important to know languages. And English-speaking Armenians need to understand us, and we need to understand them. And secondly, we're a very small nation, and it is very particularly important to be in contact with the world. And finally, translation today is becoming a very important field of action, which is huge, which needs huge financial means. And not only, and just imagine the European Union, which needs lots of translation of papers, and just imagine how much papers are needed to be translated in European Union. But Armenia is a small nation, a small country, and we particularly need to understand and observe the values that are coming from outside and are expressed with foreign languages, because only knowing a foreign language we can't do it, won't do, and it won't be enough to understand others' value. But it is not necessary to compare other values to others, because this is not the prerogative to translate others' values. And I'm particularly for the fact that in Armenia the values are shall be created, and not only translating the values of others. And one of the reasons that we today are not that sure that in Armenia most of the values are being created inside is one of the reasons is the leak of translations. We know ourselves, for example, some translations were prohibited. Many cases also in Russia. We have today translation values, but alas, we have a lot of translators, but we do not have the quality of translation, which is a question connected to literacy. Because the quality of literacy is low, but now we're trying to put up a new organization and a cooperation that we could develop new translations, good quality translations that would be literate, because literacy is the discipline of mind, and which gives importance to the book. And translating, we do for new areas to one language, so that we could create new values. This is very important, especially today that that new notions are being created every day, and we have lots of difficulties. Every language has difficulties in translating new ideas, new notions, new concepts, which had been born from starting the Soviet Union times. Such expressions as, for example, capacity building, competence building, advocacy, that we need to translate, but we have still difficulties in translating such expressions and terms. And I'm sure that Armenian terminology would help us to come up with this question. Another question we need to discuss, that Armenian language is a very long language, and we have so little time, and instead we have such a velocity of development in the world. So we need to combine, and we need to shorten all this in order to transmit meanings through Armenian, so that we could zip meanings in Armenian and transmit meanings with Armenian in the same speed. And we have lots of such kind of problems, and I would like again to repeat that literacy is very important, because the translator should be not only translator word to word, but also someone who transmits meaning, sense. The function of translator is in fact additional value, which possess only several countries which have independence, which have literate policy, and we have this lack of meta values. Yes, and we need to bring new values that would so-called reader-friendly, which would help readers to understand what is it about. And I really hope that this translation laboratory will work for this and contribution to this.
You have for so many questions that I'm kind of hesitant that the laboratory will be able to solve all the questions. Surely I have several doubts, certain doubts about compressing the language, because I remember in the 80s we were discussing the minimalization of language, and then we decided that for foreigners, because the Russian language was kind of difficult for them to pronounce, there were certain sounds that were difficult for foreigners to pronounce, so they decided to change the sound system. So, well, there were projects like that, but the language is important in its values and its features, different features. But you were right, Mr. Gabrielyan, about plurilingualism. Plurilingualism is not the feature of only Armenians, because today in the world 70% of all the population is bilingual, 70% of them. So today knowing just one language is an exception. So here we have this important role of doing proper translations, but the laboratory is more practical. And in these terms, I want the supervisor to talk more precisely on the aims and objectives of the project. Thank you. I will try to start at the beginning. In 2009, we had a project, and this is the vision. We had a great game, something called game. So trying to the vision of the հետաքրքիր եւ բավականին խիտ մտքեր են ներկայացված։ Ես ուզեմ շեշտել հատկապես մեկը դրանցից,
այն է ուղղագրել նոր համալսարանի մասին պատկերացումներ, ճշտանալի
which is very flexible to meet the demands.
Այսինքն թարգմանչական լաբորատորիա տեսնենք ենք դա տեսնում։ Այս բանին պետք է հանդես գա ոչ միայն թարգմանությունը ապահովող այն մարմինը, որը այլ նաև լինի կրթական միավոր։ Եվ այստեղ է, որ մենք փորձում ենք համադրել բոլոր ուսուցիչները, որոնք որ բախում են և որոնք շատ հետաքրքիր հնարավորություններ են տալիս և մենք օգնել այդ բախնան
Not to be afraid of anything, but to
թարգմանչական լաբորատորիան ստեղծվեց Եվրասիա հիմնադրամի և Շվեյցարիայի աջակցության շնորհիվ, այսինքն մենք կարողացանք այս դրամաշնորհի շրջանակներում ստեղծել այս մինիմալ կենտրոնացումը, որը որ անհրաժեշտ է, որպեսզի մենք կարողանանք տեղից շարժել այս գործը։ Ինչ է դա նշանակում, մենք կարողացանք ստեղծել մի տարածք բարեզբուն և փոխաբերական ոլորտով, որտեղ մենք կարողանանք համադրել այսօրվա աշխարհում առկա ուսումները։ Մասնավորապես արդեն ձեռք ենք բերել և ներմուծել ենք ուսումնական գործընթացի մեջ համակարգչային TM հաստատության հիշողության ծրագրերը, որոնք որ ուսումն է կիրառել ինֆոբր այլի օգնությամբ, այսինքն սովորաբար դրանք օգտագործում են, որպեսզի հեշտացնեն թարգմանիչները։ Մենք ուզում ենք մի շրջել այդ գործընթացը և օգտագործել այդ դատարկ հաստատության հիշողությունը, դնելու համար այն նոր վերաիմաստավորված թարգմանչական միավորներով։ Եվ դա ուզում ենք անել ուսումնական պրոցեսի շրջանային
And finally, I would like shortly to present you another initiative, which is Translation Lab. Translation Laboratory has not only practical parts and sales, but we also try to do the way it would be scientific methodological experiments done. And one of the main aims that we seek is trying to put up and to create an academic atmosphere, which is in many cases is the incentive of the new ideas that are being created. The translation blog has for now has YSLU blog that we had what we have, and we have our magisters, professors, students, different translations, ideas, essays that we hope to have discussions and I would like to ask our Ter-Gabrielyan website representative to talk about this for you. Now I would like to pass the ground to Christina Sargsyan, Armenian TEDx Initiative representative, and I would like her to tell a bit about the initiative that we're talking about. Thank you for representation. I'm talking on behalf of the TED organization and conference, TEDx Yerevan initiative. I would like to talk a little about TEDx, what is it called. In 80s in the United States, it had been held a very interesting initiative which aimed to disseminate the best and the most interesting ideas in the United States. It is interesting that this initiative took its start as a conference and it included very interesting, with very interesting things, which had been technology representation conferences. These conferences took place in the United States Long Beach conference, and it was for the most important and the most famous thinkers. But some changes had been done in the organization the organizators understood, realized that we need more things that would be disseminated to make the better world and to make the world become more. One of them is TED's initiative of open translations, and the authors talk about different things and brilliant ideas that gave basis to new and innovative ideas and reforms in the whole world. And we put up short clips of these ideas, of these representations. And furtherly, they started to be translated. And in Armenia, several professionals took this translation part, and we had all the time the aim to bring it to the university. And as we knew that there are organizations, educational institutions, and we thought of involving students in this initiative. The other initiative that TED shared with us is TEDx project. In terms of which TED gives us opportunity to use TED as a brand, where the local conferences are being held and the local thinkers are sharing with their ideas. And we had a speaker that is one of your professors. And in fact, it came out that your professor connected us with your professor Sona Hovhannisyan and told us that there is someone in our university that had included these TED Talks in our educational system, and it applies in linguistic education in general. Of course, we talked with her, we talked with students, and now I'm asking to show a little, a short clip, how this cooperation had been realized. After that, I will sum up.
Լուրջ համագործակցություն սկսեցին եւ ուսանողներից շատերը ներգրավեցին այդ բանախոսությունների թարգմանության մեջ։ Ներկայումս արդեն բավականին մեծ քանակությամբ թարգմանություններ են արվել, ընդհանուր առմամբ արդեն 200 բանախոսություն կա թարգմանված, որոնց մի մասը մոտավորապես 50-ը դեր ուսանողներն են կատարել եւ դա շատ խրախուսելի է։ Հետաքրքիրն է, որ այն գաղափարները, որոնք
and are words to be shared, because people can learn lots of things from these translations, and it can be disseminated with the help of your students and be presented in schools. Why this is important, because children can read these talks in Armenian and make discussions, and do their conclusions on these ideas. I would like to thank once more Yerevan State Linguistic University and the professor Sona Hovhannisyan, because I really believe our cooperation is a great input in our educational system. You have many times repeated that these ideas are very important, but who is to decide and regulate these ideas that are being talked about in TED? The importance of these ideas are, in fact, these are shared in internet, and people decide themselves what to watch and what not. And there are, of course, certain criteria for choosing this or that talk. And these criteria are to have innovations in this or that sphere, new ideas, new talks about life, which would help us in general to make life easier in this world. And they encourage kindness, hope, efforts for children, and have lots of different points. I would also like Ter representative to talk about our future cooperation. just like this general, in order you to have the main ideas and the main directions that we're going to cooperate in.
I'm just one of the editors of this site, arteria.am. You can see it on the screen. It was created last year in August, and it's a great parallel because that coincidence, because that was the creation, the beginning of EPF Foundation. And what's the goal of this site? The goal, the objective is to develop critical thinking, because everybody is working in different spheres in education, and we can understand, what we can conclude is that in the development of educational sphere, we have to develop critical thinking. And in our reality lacks critical thinking. You can't find it at all. The objective was this. And the site, I just want to share several ideas so that the cooperation will be clear. We just decided to keep apart from representing traditional judging and criticism. And we decided to build the site. So you can see 5 sections, 4 of which have an objective of putting forward methodology. The last section was created by the effort of all of us. You can see materials there that have to do with all the materials on the site, and that we think everybody has to learn from there. A little about the materials. I have to confess that the material is mostly academic, and we have some very light materials. We have another section there called review, and here we have all the materials that are kind of lighter. And on the side, we have already started a translation project, because we think that developing critical thinking only by our means is very difficult, because there are many experiences in the world nowadays, and we try to represent everything by translating, because we want to share our ideas in other languages too. So the cooperation started here, the idea of cooperating with you started here, because since we are translating ourselves and we try to do our best in translating. So, and as Gevorg mentioned, after translating, you have to edit, to review, so that the text becomes the text itself. So we decided to make it a field of cooperation with you, in the sense that you study languages, you do translations here, and because we lack good translators, and we have a trend to develop this translation field, so we decided to cooperate. And in our discussions with Sona, we understood that the blog that is being created by your students, it may become a great opportunity for our cooperation. So how do we imagine that? A very clear experience. So we have a review, a section called review, and we have lighter comments on there. So probably we'll have another section or subsection here, which will be connected with your blog with links, and the materials that are interesting in terms of translation, we just go to Arteria.am, and vice versa. The materials, the texts which we think that are important for you in terms of translation, we'll send to your blog. So this is our vision, but we hope that the cooperation will be bigger later on. So this much. If any questions? feel welcome to ask. No questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to tell you that it's not the site of the YSLU, but Arter.am. So the pictures of the sites you saw, those don't belong to our university, but those are different sites, and those are just examples of organizations we may cooperate with. But I would ask to concentrate on the questions, on the problems that are interesting in terms of education, maybe about education field. So I would ask the laboratory to have cooperation with the university firstly, because there are many important ideas, but you know, I remember another. I just remember another interview, and there was a young guy who had a big notebook, and Einstein asked, "Why do you have such a big notebook?" And he said, "Because I want to write down all the interesting ideas." And Einstein just replied, "Wow, all the you can't have that much interesting ideas. Interesting ideas are always few." So I just want to tell that interesting ideas are always few. You have. So the most important thing is to try to understand the objectives, and in these terms I think there are many things to do. University is open to any cooperation, and surely translators have to understand that their work is demanded. They're of great demand. And we also have to think about the Armenian Wikipedia, because we lack materials over there. Not only in quality, but in quantity. So we have a huge field for work. I just want to tell that probably we'll stop here today, and I invite everybody to see the resource center and to see the lab. Surely we understand this is just one link of our cooperation, and it has to be read from all the other links. If you don't mind, we might go to the resource center and you will be able to see the laboratory. Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers, and thanks to Mrs. Sona Hovhannisyan, who is the motivator.